Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Black to the Ballot District 26 Candidate Forum happening in Queens, virtually, of course. We want to welcome all of you and thank you for tuning in tonight. We're going to hear from some of the candidates who are running for the City Council seat in District 26, and we're so grateful for them that they gave us our time this evening for this conversation. Before we get started, I want to just introduce myself. My name is Bianca Cunningham. I'm one of the co-founders of the AfroSocialists and Socialists of Color Caucus of the DSA, as well as a DSA member myself. I'm so happy to be here with you all. And just a little bit about the caucus. AfroSoc, as we call it, is a network for Black and Brown members of the Democratic Socialists of America and more broadly. We believe that capitalism exploits everyone, but Black people and Brown people disproportionately suffer under its injustices. We believe socialism is the key to addressing the inequalities of capitalism, and we support reparations to the end of Black liberation in solidarity with our Brown and Indigenous brothers and sisters and siblings. So that's a little bit about the caucus. How it's gonna work tonight is we're gonna be hearing from three candidates, Lorenzo Brea, Sultan Maruf, and Jonathan Bailey. And we'll have a moderator, which will be Jawanza James Williams. So Jawanza is a Black radical queer abolitionist and socialist. He is currently the director of organizing at Vocal NY, a grassroots organization building power among poor and low-income New Yorkers. He's also a member of the Democratic Socialists of America and a founding member of the Afro-Socialists and Socialists of Color Caucus. So it's great, so great to have you with us, Jawanza. Take us away.
It's an honor to be here, and thank you for everybody that's watching. I'm very excited about having this wonderful conversation to Black to the Ballot. I think it's super important. So I just want to quickly go over the basic rules that we're going to hold the candidates to, and then we'll launch into the questions. Candidates will have 2 minutes each to introduce themselves. I will ask the question, and each candidate will take 2 minutes to respond. If a candidate's name is invoked, they will have a minute and 30 seconds to respond. Questions will be asked in alternating order. Candidates will have 1 minute each for closing statements. And before we get started, we'll hear opening statements from each candidate, starting with Jonathan, and you have 2 minutes. Jonathan. You're gonna wanna come off mute, John.
Okay, awesome. It's great to be here, y'all. I'm Jonathan Bailey, a candidate for City Council District 26. I'm running because we have a lot of challenges, and a lot of those challenges are things that we're very familiar with. You know, our district is 76% renters, and whether you are a renter or you are a homeowner, you know, issues of rising rents and rising housing taxes created by our decisions in land use are issues that affect all of us deeply. And on top of that, you know, we're dealing with lots of struggles around employment and ensuring that our jobs aren't just jobs, but they're good paying jobs, that we have the power necessary in our workplaces to fight for better conditions and for good treatment, as well as making sure that our communities are safe, but they're safe also under conditions that we dictate and we control as the people, that we can ensure that we are pushing forward new systems of community safety and also ensuring police accountability. Me personally, I've been involved with a lot of these struggles through my work as an anti-gentrification activist, you know, fighting from everything from just land use issues to fighting Amazon HQ2. As a co-founder of Amazonians United, our workers organization in Amazon, I've helped my coworkers, and I fight against Jeff Bezos' exploitation of workers, fight to get back our rights to paid sick leave as dictated under New York's city law, as well as just better conditions for us. I'm looking forward to being able to talk with all of y'all about our things that we're fighting for and how to change New York City. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. And do you mind just muting yourself so we can make sure that we are able to see Sultan Maruf for your first opening statement? You have 2 minutes.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Sultan Maruf. I'm running for District 26. I'm running to make a better place for our communities. I've been living in this district for almost 2 decades. And during that time, I endured so many corruption corruption in the city and state level that I want to make a difference for all people. So other people will have a better life and they don't have to face this kind of struggle. I'm planning to donate. If I get elected, I'll be donating 50% of my salary. I'm planning to end homelessness by starting Section 8 program, and also free MTA, because I endure it. Like MTA should be completely free. Regarding my background, I'm an immigrant from Bangladesh, but for the last 2 decades, like 2003, I've been an anti-war activist, and 2009 to 2018, I was a sailing instructor, dock master, and other activities, for free. And also, I think 2008 to 2000, right now, I was a USA president, director, and other position holder. And through that program, or through that organization, I campaigned for United Nations issue to the Congress and United States Senate and our local elected officials. So, UN funding can continue. And right now, I'm like, since 2013, I endured some accident and other stuff. So since that moment, I've been fighting with the landlord. I took landlord like 7 times. So, now I'm facing eviction. So my time is up. I hope, like, with your help, guidance, and support, I can able to achieve our goal, our community goal, and make a better place. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sultan, for that. And next we'll hear from Lorenzo Brea. Your first opening statement. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. First off, I want to thank everybody for having me, AfroSoc. My name is Lorenzo Brea. I'm the only candidate born and raised in New York City housing, specifically Ravenswood in the district. And being from one of the 3 NYCHA developments in the district, I have felt the results of people thinking that top-down solutions exist. We need to address the root of these issues from the bottom up. And that's why I'm organizing so heavily in New York City housing. And the results that we see from that organizing in those communities will pave the way for marginalized communities in Long Island City, Astoria, Woodside, Sunnyside, and throughout New York City. And so that's why my campaign is also focusing on meeting people where they are. One of the most critical issues affecting District 26 is food insecurity, which is why I'm helping with food pantries in Sunnyside, as well as Ravenswood houses. I started a healthier food initiative in Ravenswood houses, and I'm part of 2 healthier food initiatives in Queensbridge on Wednesdays and Fridays. On top of that, I'm organizing in Woodside, Queensbridge, and Ravenswood houses on a daily basis around issues such as no heat, no water, and I'm even doing that organizing in Astoria houses outside of the district, because I do this work regardless of imaginary boundaries. And my opponents instead have been giving the bare minimum, if anything at all, towards this organizing. And frankly, it's all our communities have ever got from people that claim to be our representatives. And that's why I'm making it my campaign's greatest priority. And one of the biggest projects that we're organizing now is a community land trust known as a CLT in Ravenswood houses. And I'm working with a team full of young people to create the first CLT that as an organization will be exclusively operated by one community. And this is also the first time that land will be fully owned and operated by one NYCHA community. And my entire team is fully composed of people from New York City housing in the district to carry out this necessary work on all ends. I'm not here as a savior. I'm here as a reflection of my community. My team and my campaign is a reflection of Black liberation. And everybody has the responsibility to see that and separate that from the self-proclaimed legislative saviors that are running in the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Deeply appreciate all of your opening statements. And now we'll transition to questions. We're going to have the first question go to Sultan. And the first question is, by how much would you support cutting the NYPD's budget? 1 billion, 3 billion?
Thank you for asking that question. I have to say show one thing. I filed a complaint against my landlord to the NYPD. In 2018, nothing happened. So I, as a victim, I know the pain of what some of the NYPD does. But like the thing is, how much we have to look into the budget, then figure out. In New York Times, there is an article that says that there are like there are like a certain amount that like for example $287 million to being used. $1 million is like fire abusive officer, cut modified duty, and deduct settlement payout from the operating budget as a punitive damage. We spent $287 million for that. Cut them out. When a police officer commit a crime, it should come from their own pocket, not from our taxpayer money. There are so many more. And we have to look at the budget. Like that's why I like this New York Times article. They put out all this step by step. Like this is a first step to reduce the budget. But like we have to look into the budget properly and make a educated assessment that like this is the amount that need to be deducted. Also, like for example, like a school. The police officer, they go there just to arrest a student. It shouldn't be that way. So those funds need to be directed toward a community sponsor activist or somebody who can organize like this kind of legal issue with the students. And there are more. I'll talk about it later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. We're going to ask the same question to Jonathan, but I'll read it again for our audience. By how much would you support cutting the NYPD's budget? 1 billion, 3 billion? Jonathan?
So I think that what we're trying to achieve is clear. We need a substantive reduction of the police budget because we actually want to shift from carceral methods of community safety and accountability to ones that focus on ensuring that there isn't crimes of subsistence in the first place. In order to actually meaningfully make those shifts, to be able to introduce new types of community safety, such as I advocate something that reflects the system of Denver, Colorado's STAR program, where EMTs are paired with social workers to respond to 911 calls. We need to make sure that we are shifting at least $3 billion away from the NYPD budget line into those new systems. I think that one of the things that are really important for us to observe, though, is that in the case of Detroit, where the police budget just wasn't increased as quickly as was desired by some folks, there was a proliferation of privatized police forces. Now, a lot of people don't know, we already have one privatized police force here in New York. We have to make sure that the way we go about this doesn't just give rise to a proliferation of privatized policing, because the way that our society is constructed, police actually serve as a protective force for those who own our society against the interests of working class people. We know the NYPD was actually born out of cracking down on labor struggles. So when we talk about changing the way that community safety happens, when we talk about defunding the NYPD, we have to think about how do we actually move to new systems of community accountability in ways that don't just give rise and proliferation of privatized police forces. This is totally something that we can do, though. This is something that isn't like, we're actually behind on this in New York City. There's other examples of this all over the world, and if we're working together, we can actually change into new systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. And next we'll hear from Lorenzo, same question, which I'll read again. By how much would you support cutting the NYPD's budget? 1 billion, 3 billion? Lorenzo?
Thank you for the question. I support cutting the NYPD's budget completely. So if the budget is 6 billion, I support cutting it by 6 billion. If it's 11 billion, I support cutting it by 11 billion. We need to create a plan to defund the NYPD as soon as possible. And I'm currently organizing with the communities that have been most brutalized by the NYPD, being New York City housing, and specifically in the 114th precinct. You can easily see how the 114th precinct with the most stop and frisks in the entire borough of Queens in 2019, all of those stop and frisks were concentrated around New York City housing in that precinct. So I'm currently organizing with members of that community around resident management corporations, for example, where they'll be able to create a public safety initiative or force of sorts. And ultimately, it's just localizing this power and the power that and the voice that they have in deciding what they want to see from public safety in their neighborhoods, and especially in the communities that have been most brutalized by the NYPD. That's where a lot of the attention needs to be placed when these decisions are made, because these are the communities that have been suffering the most. And so I don't want to speak on behalf of all of these unique experiences as to what that would look like, but we definitely need to localize this power, because the NYPD doesn't provide the outlet for the community to speak about the issues that they've been facing for decades. And defunding the NYPD to localize this power is exactly what that would do. And as a city, we need to see how that can look, and how restorative and transformative justice can look on a wide scale, even if it's localized in very different communities, several communities all over the city.
Thank you, Lorenzo, and thank you to our three speakers for answering that first question, which I do believe is a very prescient question, in particular today, where we learned that the police officers responsible for the death of Daniel Prude in Rochester, New York, will not face criminal charges for his murder. This is the kind of stuff that we need to be having conversations about, not just in New York City, but across the state. So it's really important that we ask these kinds of questions. So our second question, we'll start with Lorenzo this time. And the question is, do you oppose the borough-based jails plan, and will you support the immediate closure of Rikers Island without new jails? What are your solutions for existing borough-based jails? How will you support decarceration for Rikers now? Lorenzo?
Absolutely. I know that was a stat question. I'm going to answer it to the best of my ability, and please let me know if I missed anything. I oppose the borough-based jail plan. I support the closure of Riker without the creation of new jails. And this is the least that we need to do as elected officials, advocating on behalf of the formerly incarcerated and the communities that will likely be incarcerated in the future, on behalf, on the road to restorative and transformative justice. We need to go further than that in making sure that the land that is now Rikers Island, that we reach out to the formerly incarcerated to see what they want to see from the land that they suffered on. We need to, this is the only way that we can carry out restorative and transformative justice, even when it comes to land use, and specifically when it comes to such an island that has been used to brutalize Black and brown communities all over the city and marginalized communities. And I'm sorry, was there another, I know that it was put in the chat.
If you could pause the time, Bianca. Lorenzo, the question is, the second parts of the question are, I'll read it again. Do you oppose the borough-based jails plan, and will you support the immediate closures of Rikers Island without new jails? What are your solutions for existing borough-based jails, and how will you support decarceration for Rikers now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we need to be looking at why people are incarcerated right now in Rikers Island. And if that's due to lack of money for bail, or if that's due to policies that have now been decriminalized or are on the road to legalization, we need to be organizing as communities around those members of our communities that have been incarcerated unjustly. And that's the same action that we need to take on behalf of borough-based jails that are being created. There's injustices happening in all jails across the city and this country, and we need to, as communities, realize that marginalized communities all over the city are suffering because of these policies and because of these jails. And so that organizing takes place on the ground when it comes to resident management corporations, especially since NYCHA is such an over-policed community, as an example. And then we see the results from that in, actions and movements that now are becoming citywide with the Black Lives Matter movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Let's put that question next to Jonathan. I'll read it again for our audience. Do you oppose the borough-based jails plan, and will you support the immediate closure of Rikers Island without new jails? What are your solutions for existing borough-based jails, and how will you support decarceration for Rikers now? Jonathan?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that question. So a lot of people are familiar that one of the largest issues that we have in America, specifically because of our legacy of chattel slavery, is our carceral approaches to everything. Personally, I've been in jail before, specifically because of my lack of ability to pay off a taillight ticket. The smallest things, anything, we just slap on a carceral approach with it. And we have to move away from this. When we say systemic change, we actually have to be looking at that approach and moving away from it in every way possible. Me and a lot of my friends here with DSA were very, very active in the fight against the new jails and have supported both the closure of Rikers as well as the No New Jails Coalition. As somebody who was influential in helping DSA to stand alongside those demands, I know like some folks are probably familiar that this is something that I'm very passionate about. We need to make sure though also that we are not using bail as a system in which to exploit people, to extract value out of their pockets, to actually push them out of their homes, which is a common practice. And in our district, being one that has a lot of NYCHA residents, is often used as a way to evict people. So we need to make sure that we're not using our carceral systems to extract money out of people's pockets, to evict them from their homes, and instead focus on ensuring that we bring a transformative justice approach to our society.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And I'll read the question again for you, Sultan. Do you oppose the borough-based jails plan, and will you support the immediate closure of Rikers Island without new jails? What are your solutions for existing borough-based jails, and how will you support decarceration for Rikers now?
Thank you for asking that question. It's a serious question. And even though I was an activist like 4 or 5 years ago to close the Rikers Island jail, but this is a serious issue that need to be asked to our community based on our community input. Like if 51% of our community member approve that close it, then that should be my voice. I'm supposed to be voice of our community, our people, our district people. I shouldn't be the judge what should not be done or should be done. It should come from our local people. If they say like a 51% or more say close it, close it. And that's why I have to be, even though I was definitely want close the Rikers Island, and I also do not like a borough-based precedent and solution. I'll ask the local people, if you want to close both systems, where are you going to put our jail people who committed violent crime? And the jail population should be reduced significantly, because lots of people, like maybe 10% are violent criminal, but the rest of the 90% are like a small time thing. Like it should be community-based, at home take care system that community organization should be reliable or hold them different way. instead of sending them to the jail. But anyway, I have to say a community voice is my voice, not me, because I have to be voice of my district, not, I don't have a voice regarding this serious issue. I'm sorry about my asking to community what they want. I'm going to put a poll on it, and based on that poll, that my position will be shaped based on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. And we'll move on to our third question, and we'll start let's actually start with you, Sultan, and I'll read it now. Should public schools have police officers, sometimes called school safety officers?
Definitely not. But we have to be careful. Some of the students are suffering. When they suffer lots of things at home, oftentimes they project. They're young. They don't understand lots of things, and they become angry and they act upon when they go to the school. So we have to hire social worker who can understand. We have to uplift the community. Like lots of students are hungry, homeless, and all of those things. And when they go to the school and see other students are like rich, and they act upon it. So I don't think we should be putting a police officer in the school. Definitely not. But my community has to voice up what they want. But we have to be hire more social worker who has the authority to put them in a better way so they don't act up. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. We're going to move to Lorenzo. Same question. Should public schools have police officers, sometimes called school safety officers?
There shouldn't be any police at schools, no matter what they're called. And the extension of the NYPD in New York City schools is the extension of a system that doesn't support restorative and transformative justice, which is the direction that we need to be going into. So I'm going to say no, there shouldn't be any police or school safety officers in schools.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Jonathan, same question. Should public schools have police officers, sometimes called school safety officers?
Thanks. I think this is a simple one for all of us. Clearly, no. But this, I guess, is another example of the way that we have a carceral approach to any problem that we have here. We actually took on a campaign as DSA members to support the fight against school suspensions that are often used on predominantly Black and Brown students as a way of conditioning, of preparing and facilitating the pipeline from school discipline to carceral discipline in society at large. So yes, we have to make sure that there's no police in our schools, but we also have to think about how do we just stop always instituting a carceral approach whenever there is an issue with students. How do we create the community needed in classrooms so that community accountability is a thing that we can actually put into action? How do we encourage feelings of accountability from us as individuals to each other and make sure that that's facilitated in schools, and that that's something that we carry into our lives so that we don't need a carceral approach when there's the person who is trying to subsist in life and is in struggle and in need.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank the other two candidates for answering that question as well. And in fact, Jonathan, we're going to start with you on question 4, which is, do you support the expansion of charter schools? If so, why? If not, please explain why not.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So there's a lot of different feelings on charter schools, and I think that there is one that is the correct analysis. though there is definitely an approach that I understand and kind of sympathize with parents being frustrated with, maybe like failings of public schools, mostly just really truthfully because of our lack of political will to properly fund our public schools. But I understand that there's a frustration and a desire to escape and create something that is theirs. And it seems to resonate with this idea is so that we can guard our communities against colonialism. And though I appreciate that as a sentiment, one of the things that we have to do is properly fund our public schools. We have to make sure that that we're investing in our youth so that we can have the society that we want when kids grow up and are joining the workforce and society at large as adults. So I'm very much against the expansion of charter schools. We should fund our public schools. Let's do it.
Thank you, Jonathan. Deeply appreciated. Let's actually hear from Lorenzo next. I'll ask the question again. Do you support the expansion of charter schools? If so, why? And if not, please explain why not.
Yes, I don't necessarily support or oppose the expansion of charter schools. I think that charter schools are an alternative and really a distraction to the attention that we need to be providing to public schools, because there's still going to be such a great amount of students within this city that need a quality public education, and we can't deny that fact. And so that's attention that we need to be providing as community activists as well as elected officials, because our public school system right now is broken, and we need to focus all of our attention and resources into improving that system, from funding to curriculum to all other aspects, such as the racial divide when it comes to not enough male teachers of color. These are aspects of our school system that we have yet to address and that we need to focus more attention on rather than charter schools. And it's our responsibility as a city to provide that basic quality education, which we're falling short of right now.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Sultan, same question. I'll read it again. Do you support the expansion of charter schools? If so, why? If not, please explain why not.
It's simple. As long they don't take city money, do whatever they like. If a community member wants to create a charter school, do it. But don't take our city, city fund. As long they don't take city fund or federal fund, they can do whatever they want with a charter school. But our public school need to be fully funded. It should be increased funding. Now, like a charter school, is depend on the community too. If like a group of in our district, some group of people wants to create their own way of teaching, we shouldn't interfere. They have their rights to have it. But anyway, my point is, as long they don't take city fund, state fund, and federal fund, then it's up to them. It's up to the group of people who wants to open a charter school. Go for it. But I want our city funded school or public school should be fully funded, increased funding, and more. Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. We're going to move on to question 5, and we're going to start with Lorenzo. And I'll read the question now. Do you support the specialized high school admission test, school screens, and gifted and talented programs?
I don't necessarily support those programs or the SHSAT. I think I have more of a specific issue with specialized high schools, in particular, especially receiving more funding and more diverse programming than schools in Black and Brown and marginalized communities. And that's the main issue that students in those marginalized communities are facing. Their schools are failing because of the lack of funding, and we're prioritizing that funding for specialized high schools. We need to be creating a system where schools in these marginalized communities are more equitably funded and are given that attention when it comes to programming and when it comes to these students that may need more psychologists or more counselors when it comes to so many other issues that they're facing on a daily basis that should be addressed while they're in school, since they spend so much of their time in that space. So yeah, that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Let's go to Jonathan. Do you support the specialized high school admission tests, school screens, and gifted and talented programs?
So my issue is that it increases the amount of racial disparities that exist in New York City. Instead of planning for with like specifically starting off with the goal of ensuring that there's access to different kinds of programs to all of our children. There's the issue of implementing all of these resources for education in ways that that stratify access along racial and income levels. So I'm very much against it. I think that we can find ways to ensure that everyone has access. And again, this is why it's so important to make sure that we are properly funding our public schools so that we can have a strong educational infrastructure for all New York kids.
Thank you, Jonathan. Sultan, same question, but I'll ask it again. Do you support the specialized high school admission test, school screens, and gifted and talented programs?
Not in public school. In same thing in charter school. You know, if somebody wants to create their own special school, go for it. And city should not fund for that. But like we need to promote like talented kids too. But it shouldn't, you know, that's why we need to increase funding for the public school and encourage our, you know, public school, that kind of program that helps, not like, you know, discriminate, like, you know, that person is gifted, that person is gifted, but like everybody, you know, has to know all these things. But we have to be careful that, like, you know, in private school or charter school or whatever, they can do whatever they like without our funding, without our money. And of course, my position might change based on our community input. Like 51% say something like that, you know, we have to be that way or other way. We have to be careful. I have to be voice of my own people, and that voice should be my voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. We're going to move on to question 6, and we're going to again start with Jonathan. The question 6 is, would you support a primary challenger to Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York State, from the left?
Yes. So this actually, I think, really goes to like, how do we handle internal democracy within our movement spaces? And this is like a particularly fun question, I think, for those of us on the left, because we end up having debates on whether we're going to advance certain left policies or not, but we haven't really figured out a way of how do we come to a consensus so that we can fight for that together. Our coalitions end up fracturing whenever we land on a demand that people are you know, uneasy about. And so, yeah, I support, of course, I support a challenger to Cuomo, but I mean, I don't want him to send his goons around to my DSA branch anymore. But even more than that, I want to make sure that we're finding ways in which we can come to a collective consensus around what demands we're forwarding to the state so that we can actually move with more power and a collective voice when we are moving.
Thank you, Jonathan. Let's go to Lorenzo. Would you support a primary challenger to Andrew Cuomo from the left?
Yes, I think that I definitely would support a primary challenger to Andrew Cuomo from the left, but I think that we're alluding to so many more issues on a state level and overall in a government space where we need more action on behalf of marginalized people that I don't think Andrew Cuomo's carrying out, and that's probably you know, that's the implication of this question. And I think that we need to be more explicit about the problems that we're trying to address with this question, which is that we need more we need more advocates and more activists advocating for marginalized people that may not have that voice when it comes to people like Andrew Cuomo that only listen or only act based on certain pressure. And I think that the solution, the deeper solution to that, and addressing the root of that issue, is organizing at a community level. Because if there's any issues that we think can only be solved at the state level from one person that's put in power, such in such a place of power as the governor, then we're not advocating on our communities as effective as we need to be. You know, all of these issues are the issues that should be addressed or should be able to be addressed at the community level, and they're not right now. And supporting a primary challenger of Andrew Cuomo to the left won't be doing that either. It's work on the ground that we need to be doing in our communities. And we're the most local elected officials that have to carry out that work, and that's what I'll be dedicated to. Not focusing energy and resources into some distant challenger from Andrew Cuomo to the left when we have issues in the district that have rarely been affected by anything other than issues that we should be able to address as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Sultan, would you support a primary challenger to Andrew Cuomo from the left?
100%, because when we have more candidate and diverse background candidate, diverse policy candidate, then there is a debate like today. And then people will see a different idea and get the different idea to their policy. And I learned from these two candidates lots of things that I wasn't thinking before. And that's the way it should be. And by the way, I sue Governor Cuomo and Mayor too to stop the in-person petitioning. Is what I do is action, not like chit-chatting and other things. Like, we have to be careful, and like we have to promote more diverse people to compete against each other, and we'll get a positive result from that. Do I have more time or okay? And like for example, like I joined Jumani William in this campaign, and for example, I helped Jumani a little bit when there was another candidate who wanted to run against him. So I promoted that, like, please let the person run, because if person of color run against each other, then we're not going to get back people into power, especially certain disability with everything. But he's an activist. We should promote him like that way. So anyway, I'm saying that, like, when we have diverse people, we have a better candidate, better outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. We're actually going to start with you for the next question. Would you accept all expenses paid trips to Israel as an elected official?
100% no. Why? What's the reason for that? And why somebody wants to give us money to go there, or it doesn't make any sense. I've been to promoting Holocaust issue last 4 or 5 years through the United Nations. I've been having event and activities regarding human rights issue, regarding genocide and everything. But that doesn't mean that, like, some government will offer me something and I'm going to accept. This is a truly, I don't know why they would offer me and what's the reason. And I've been for everybody. Is when we accept this kind of thing, then it becomes, I don't want to be anybody's puppet. I want to be voice of the people. And that's my policy from the beginning. And that's why I've been telling everybody that, like, ask local people. You don't even ask, local people. There is a polling system online, like video. I'm saying this is my opinion. But my opinion doesn't matter when my local people are saying something else. And regardless, I will never accept those kind of, trip, period. Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. Let's go to Lorenzo. Would you accept all expenses paid trips to Israel as an elected official?
No, I would not accept any expenses paid trip to any location remote. Within the states, Puerto Rico, and any other countries, a council member is paid more than enough to handle any expenses when it comes to any trip or vacation related, um, you know, expenses. So my answer is absolutely not.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Let's go to Jonathan. Would you accept all expenses paid trips to Israel as an elected official?
So I think that like this is a question about colonialism, and in what ways we're going to engage in or look over or support colonialism that's executed on people. The answer to that question is no, but it needs to be no for any colonial power. We should not be in the business of supporting colonialism, whether it's colonialism that's executed on Palestinians, whether it is our support of civil rights abuses of Duterte's regime, or whether it's colonialism that's executed upon the Haitian people. I think that it's very clear we got to be drawing these lines within our movement of where we see colonialism happening and where we're taking the right stance, so that we can actually work towards building an international movement against capitalist exploitation and the violence of colonialism. And I mean, as you know, like as folks who live in the heart of empire, this is our key responsibility. Thank you.
Thank the three of you for those responses. The next question, we're going to start with Lorenzo. Do you oppose the privatization of NYCHA via RAD, the rental assistance demonstration?
Yes, I oppose the privatization of NYCHA by any means. The blueprint, the RAD, any other names that NYCHA or any other bodies come up with. I'm organizing on a daily basis for resident management corporations and CLTs so that residents can have more power and efficiency in organizing against those privatization efforts by NYCHA or whoever. And they'll be able to manage their own buildings through these resident management corporations, RMCs, and they'll also be slowly diminishing NYCHA's incompetent presence from their crumbling homes that they've been experiencing for decades, and that the city or state has failed to do anything about. And yet again, it's a responsibility of advocates and elected officials or any representatives at any level to advocate for these solutions needing to be addressed at a local level. And so both of these structures, whether it's CLTs or resident management corporations, they give more power and representation and oversight when it comes to NYCHA residents having more power over the state of their housing as well as the state of their community. So yes, I oppose all means of privatization of NYCHA.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Let's go over to Sultan. Do you oppose the privatization of NYCHA via RAD, the rental assistance demonstration?
100% I oppose it. 100% I oppose that RAD or whatever company they want to, interfere, a publicly funded program. This is the thing. The people, offer like, illusion, like, heaven. In the same time, they are taking away all our rights, and this needs to be stopped. And this is crazy thing, like, and I don't know why the city is even offering this kind of program. And this is a sneaky way, those scam artists, elected official, and also like, paid employee, they are doing this kind of crazy thing to take away the rights of the NYCHA people, and we have to stop it. And it's really sad that like, these people are getting the money, fund and everything, while they are not building more, affordable housing. You see, I get an eviction order, court order. Where am I going to go? I applied 7 years ago for the public housing. I didn't get it. So we need more affordable housing. Like that's why I offer it. We have to end homelessness. We have to restart the Section 8 program. Why not? They are not offering that program. They shut down that one and making us poor. And then like they are offering that illusion that a RAD program and this program and that program is going to solve all our problems. don't believe those kind of people. I hope people will understand. Just like Amazon, we educated people. We stopped it. Hopefully, other people will understand that we need to stop this kind of write-up, blah 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 thing. Please do not support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. Jonathan, do you oppose the privatization of NYCHA via RAD, the rental assistance demonstration?
So there's this really cool fact of socialist history that a lot of people aren't aware of. Back in the early 1900s, socialists in New York and across the U.S., in collaboration with our own parties and CPUSA, were able to push democratic control over neighborhoods, over public housing neighborhoods, into Section 9, which is like one of the coolest things, enshrining democratic control over the neighborhood. It's one of those pieces of our history that are amazing. I am so in support of making sure that we protect that legacy, that we invest in that legacy. And so I've always been very much against anything that privatizes public housing. And that's actually kind of what led me to become involved with Justice for All Coalition, which is kind of our most, I would say, influential organization within public housing here in Western Queens. I happen to be an executive committee member because I've been working on this really heavily. Not just because obviously the combination of anti-gentrification issues and the potential for resident councils like the one in Queensbridge, or the one that should be in Queensbridge but it isn't anymore, and the ones in the rest of the district, to be strong institutions that fight gentrification, but also just we deserve to have control, democratic control over our communities and our workplaces. So I'm going to continue investing as much effort as I can in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Actually, we're going to start with you on the next question. Did you oppose Amazon coming to Queens, the Inwood rezoning, the Flushing rezoning? Why or why not? I put the question in the chat as well because it's multi-part.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So yes, I opposed all of them. I don't think you can really call yourself an anti-gentrification activist if you supported any of that. I mean, some folks know me as like the dude with the fro on the front of the New York Times with the fight against Amazon HQ2. Me and other members of the Queens Housing Working Group were really involved in building coalitions around that fight, and are like, I couldn't, like, there has to be just a huge amount of celebration of folks like Alex Crawley and Maggie Harris, and some other folks that are in that group, but also to other groups like Queens Neighborhoods United and Queens Anti-Gentrification Project. I'm always going to be fighting upzonings and other schemes that people put into play in order to gentrify our neighborhoods. And I hope to be able to produce something in not too much of time that really helps shed a little bit more light on what that conflict was about and how it went down. Because even though it's so known, most people don't understand why or what that was about. And as an Amazon worker myself, with Amazonians United, I'm like intimately familiar with Amazon strategies and the way that relates to housing and the fight to gentrify our neighborhoods. So thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Lorenzo, did you oppose Amazon coming to Queens, the Inwood rezoning, the Flushing rezoning? Why or why not?
I was and am opposed to all of those rezonings. Many people in Queensbridge and Ravenswood, for example, didn't and still don't know what Flushing or Inwood rezonings are or their significance to marginalized communities all over the city. So I was primarily involved in education about how Amazon would be a detriment to our community amongst my peers, family members, and people I grew up with in Ravenswood and Queensbridge, since this neighborhood is my home. And all I could tell them about was Amazon's history as an anti-worker corporation and how our city was giving them tax breaks, even though our communities desperately need that money. And the fight to stop that specific rezoning that was proposed in 2018 was a battle, but we needed to realize it was a war to keep them out. And now they're currently confirmed to be coming to the same district across the street from Queensbridge, the largest housing development in the country. And that should make it clear that we've failed to actually provide a foundation in the community to oppose Amazon coming to Queens. And that's why I'm organizing a model of a community land trust CLT in Ravenswood that can be emulated in Queensbridge, Woodside, and every marginalized community in Queens and in the city. And that organization gives every member of marginalized communities a voice and a structure where they can efficiently and effectively organize against, whether it's against corporations such as Amazon moving across the street, or instead something that the community actually decides what they want to do as a collective with land that private organizations always have the opportunity to do, but that, you know, marginalized communities never think that they have the opportunity to take advantage of that land and use it as something that's actually beneficial to their community. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Sultan, did you oppose Amazon coming to Queens, the Inwood rezoning, the Flushing rezoning? Why or why not?
100% I opposed it from the beginning. And like whenever I touch something, I achieve success. And that's one of them is Amazon. And like, thing is like, even though I opposed it, we are, the main issue was that I should have, you know, educate our people. I went to door in NYCHA and other location. And you know, I educated people that like this issue, you know, you have to understand why we should oppose it. But my mistake was like, I didn't get a polling in the area, you know, get a 51% or more, you know, support that like, we should not support Amazon. Like, for example, okay, Amazon wanted to come, okay, this 25,000 people employee, and it will yield like 75,000 new residents to the local area, and our voting power will shift to somewhere else. People need to understand that. If they come, okay, how about like 90% or 95% our local residents should be employed? It should be, you know, under contractual agreement. Not like a, you know, sugarcoated saying, oh, we are going to create a job. You are creating a job by hiring and bringing new people in the area and creating a rich environment and over gentrification. And that would create like, you know, we are already, you know, getting away, like we are fleeing in this area already. So we need to be careful that like our local people need to stay here. If we over gentrify with the, like this kind of people and like a $3 billion giving it away, crazy. That's crazy. We could create like 20,000 unit or I think 15,000 unit like housing apartment. Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. We're going to go again, starting with Lorenzo. Do you support the full decriminalization of sex work, fair evasion, and drug possession?
Yes, I support the decriminalization of all sex work, fair evasion, and drug possession. I think that's the least that we can do yet again. I think that we need to be more explicit about the assistance that the people involved in sex work, or that are caught in fair evasion, or that were incarcerated or may be incarcerated for drug possession, the assistance that they need, and addressing those root issues being possibly human trafficking, or, you know, fair evasion being the economic injustices that those people face and that they can't even afford a ride on the train or a bus, as well as drug possession as well. And so we need to address these issues at their root, and decriminalizing is the first step. So absolutely, I'm on board with that. But we need to be more aggressive about the work that we do on behalf of those members of our community that have been harmed by, you know, the criminalization of all of those.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Let's go to Jonathan next. Do you support the full decriminalization of sex work, fair evasion, and drug possession?
Hey, yeah. So I was actually really intimately involved with helping craft DSA's demands for the DA coalition and that race here in Queens, Tiffany Caban's race for district attorney. I'm like we dug into these things really deep, and we like found a lot of like reactionary sentiment from folks around this idea and myth that what decriminalization does is it increases sex trafficking, which is one, completely false, and actually contributes to the harm that that police often are exacting on these communities. We're very much in support of decriminalizing these activities. There's no reason why we should be approaching them with a carceral approach. Excuse me. Any harm that we see happening around the exchange or trade of these like goods and services, we can create both systems of accountability and making sure that we have community safety in ways that aren't carceral.
Thank you, Jonathan. Sultan, do you support the full decriminalization of sex work, fair evasion, and drug possession?
100%. People has their own body. It should be their own choice, and by decriminalizing, we are getting more fund, tax and money and other for the, and also like a safety of our community. It will increase like they won't be victim of abusive pimps and crazy people. They can get legal protection for that. And fair evasion, can you imagine, like, people, why do people avoid fair? Because they are poor. $2-3, you want to put them in a jail, or come on. That's why I want to, it should be completely free. I'm proposing 1.2% wealth tax. So it could be, you can, like, everybody, there shouldn't be the money we spend on those like a machine, we can save lots of money. And 1.2% wealth tax, we can like eliminate up to $60,000 or $70,000 income holder completely free. And for example, if you are making $80,000, the tax should be based on $80 monthly. If you like $80,000 times 1.2% tax, it will come like only $80 a month. So you have to like, the fair should be based on your income. If somebody is making $10,000, I had to go to Manhattan for medical treatment. I couldn't afford it. So I know the pain. So hopefully, like, whoever get elected, we should eliminate, MTA fair completely. And what else that you mentioned? I forgot the other one.
The question was, do you support
last part?
Like decriminalizing drug possession?
Yeah, definitely. It's their own choice, but like we have to, educate people that this is a real crisis. You have to get help, and we have to, involve communities, because we don't want to overflow a drug issue in our community that much. But we have to be extremely careful, and like, and 100% they shouldn't be put on the jail for tiny crime. This is not even crime, it's a recreational thing. We have to educate our community that like this is not the issue, and people are dying. You have to show them that, look, what happened is like, if you do drugs, the money is a really issue, and you are wasting so much money for a silly thing. You buy have like a burger or a chicken roast. There's so many things you can have. You want to have to go high. So we have to educate people that this is a dangerous thing, and definitely not criminalize them. Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. Let's actually start again with Lorenzo. Do you support cannabis? What actions do you take to ensure cannabis justice? And what is your understanding and desire for how marijuana justice, or what is the marijuana justice for our communities? I'm going to put that in the chat as well so you can see.
Yeah, I was going to say, just give me 1 second as I take a look at that. Okay. Yes, I support cannabis, and sorry, just going to take a quick look at this. Yeah, I support cannabis, and in terms of carrying out cannabis justice, I'm organizing specifically with people who are and who were and are still part of this underground economy and who have been incarcerated because of racist policy and practices that have resulted from, you know, a root of cannabis and how we see drugs in Black and brown communities, well, specifically cannabis in Black and brown communities. And now those same people that I've been organizing with are leading the vision as to what they deserve from the state and the city in terms of marijuana as it's being decriminalized and legalized. And so, you know, my family is very close to this issue, and so, you know, as much as I believe I have experience with people who have suffered at the hands of policy around cannabis, organizing with younger people as well as people that have been in the community suffering by this on a nonstop basis, they should be the first one presented with entrepreneurship opportunities as these industries, you know, flood New York City at a certain time, or a reparation tax on this industry being redirected to those negatively impacted communities, is what I'm getting from the organizing that I'm doing on a daily basis. And that's how I plan to carry out cannabis justice, just continuing that organizing with a strong foundation in my community specifically.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Let's pop over to Jonathan. Do you support cannabis? What actions do you take to ensure cannabis justice? And what is your understanding and desire for how marijuana justice is achieved for our communities?
Yeah, Lorenzo makes a good point that that's a complex question. Well, for me, I can remember actually, you know, at like what point in my childhood, all my friends just like everybody was smoking weed. And I think like it's kind of like this open joke almost that like that's like smoking weed is extremely common among Americans, even though it's this highly criminalized activity. I can remember when those same friends ended up becoming involved with like a lot of different like gang activity that ended up really creating huge difficulties and a lot of pain in their lives. We actually encourage that with the way that we have set up our systems, with the way that we have actively criminalized something, and then targeted Black and brown folks with the violence of that criminalization. I'm really like both for recognizing that, as the fact is that most people are very familiar with marijuana, both using it and everybody knows somebody who uses it, and it's just about who ends up bearing the burden for that and the criminalization of that. So yes, decriminalize is important, but also making sure that we're actually creating systems of reparations for the harm that we have done. We should be enfranchising folks into being able to be the beneficiaries of something that is commonly traded. And we should be looking to those folks who we have systemically destroyed their lives in order to make sure that they can be the beneficiaries of us recognizing this injustice that we have put upon America for the longest time.
Thank you, Jonathan. Sultan, do you support cannabis? What actions do you take to ensure cannabis justice? And what is your understanding and desire for how marijuana justice is achieved for our communities?
Definitely, I support cannabis or marijuana, even though I never had marijuana in my life, but I supported it. I've been advocate for like I think 10 years when I learned that there are certain benefit of it. Example, the oil they makes, and it help also like children and other. They showed us proof that it helped health wise. Also, like the injustice that Jonathan mentioned that happens so many people for simple thing, it's a really thing. Fortunately, it's like it's now it's okay to have marijuana, but like in order to have proper justice, we have to decriminalize everything. and expunge all those bad record from whoever got a victim of this kind of silly thing, having a marijuana. We have to, those record needs to be expunged completely from their personal record. And reparation that Jonathan mentioned, that it is necessary. And hopefully, also we have to understand, we have to ask our community too, we have to educate our community that there is so much benefit of having a cannabis right, that you should always support it. But another thing we have to understand, people do indoor inside the apartment or other places, or in the park. They shouldn't openly have smoking. I don't like that, those kind of things. They have to be respectful for non-smoker. But I will always promote marijuana in my forever. But hopefully our community member will agree with me and put an end to this kind of injustice that lots of people endure in their lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. Actually, the next question is for you. Are you a member of the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America? Do you identify as a Democratic Socialist? Why or why not?
I am a member, and I'm much more socialist than a DSA. I'm extremely liberal, anti-war activist, always housing right, immigrants' right, Muslim, against Muslim ban. I've been in the street all the time, last 15, 20 years. So I'm too much liberal, but hopefully that should not be an issue for the local community. Just because I'm an extreme liberal and socialist, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be like that. I will ask our community member before any issue or policy being implemented. That's the way it should be. An elected official has to ask local community what they want, and their voice should be my voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. Lorenzo, are you a member of the Democratic Socialists of America? Do you identify as a Democratic Socialist? Why or why not?
Yes, I am a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and I believe, I generally identify as a democratic socialist, but I think that when it comes to the communities that I was raised a part of, I'm just a kid from Ravenswood, and a lot of the people that I've grown up around and I'm still working around and organizing with on a daily basis at this point, I think that I have to acknowledge them in this answer that a lot of the language and the ideas behind democratic socialism are largely inaccessible. And I'm trying to do that work without complicated language or complicated ideas, and that's what I strive to do on a daily basis. Simplify these things because they're ideas that we face on a daily basis, and there's not a necessity, at least I don't believe, to complicate their already complicated lives, dealing with politics and how that's becoming more local at this point. So I think that there's a lot of work that we have to do in education about the understanding of democratic socialism, especially in marginalized communities where that may be a trigger for especially some Latina people and undocumented people that may have been, fleeing lands where socialism presided over. But I think that it's work that I carry out on a daily basis, and not through the language, but through accessibility and meeting people where they are in the issues that they face. And that being a reflection of democratic socialism just so happens to be the case. I'm ultimately led by the justice for those marginalized people in my district.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Jonathan, are you a member of the DSA, and do you identify as a democratic socialist? Why or why not?
Yeah. So yes. Actually, so my what brought me to socialism, actually, I always say this, that white folks tend to come to socialism through struggles around like economic struggles, right? Whereas Black and brown folks usually come to socialism through the fight against colonialism. For me, like what actually brought me to socialism was looking at Black folks throughout American history, how they've like dealt with oppression and exploitation, and that kind of brought me to look at, okay, how did those in the civil rights fight this? How did what type of community organizing and supporting each other did the Black Panthers do in order to change the conditions of Black folks in America? And so for me, that was kind of my way of getting to socialism. We have like a rich tradition of socialism in Black America, and really honestly America at large. And so for me, like learning from all of those folks who could has kind of been the way that I got here. A lot of folks also know that I was a part of the first Afro-Socialist caucus organizing committee and helping us set up our systems. Support me or I'll close down our G Suite. No, I'm joking. But also as being a co-chair of Queens DSA. And our membership coordinator before that. I'm thoroughly enmeshed in DSA. So yeah, socialism will win.
Thank you, Jonathan. We'll move to the next question. Sultan, who are you supporting for mayor and why?
I'm not supporting anybody at the moment. I don't even have the time to look at all the candidates, but it should be a people choice, and we have to be careful who we are selecting. And I hope it's from person of color or immigrant from the immigrant community. So we need to we helped elect Obama 2008. I campaigned. And next time, women's, and we have to be diversified. Otherwise, we'll never have the pleasure of seeing different flavor. I hope like people will select a little bit different person and person of color. So we didn't have a Black mayor for a long time, and I hope this time is a person who is from African American communities. But anyway, I haven't looked through all the details yet. So I apologize, I haven't, select or support anybody at the moment right now.
Thank you, Sultan. Lorenzo, who are you supporting for mayor and why?
Right now, I'm not explicitly supporting or endorsing anybody for mayor. I largely because I think that the mayor of New York City is such a large office that's greatly disconnected from a lot of the struggles that we face on a community level, based on the inefficient and ineffective community structures that we have right now that are responsible for representing us on the most hyper local level. And so it's very difficult to address that at the mayor's level. But one of the people who have been part of the organizing is Joycelyn Taylor, at least specifically in my district, in the most marginalized areas of my district. So I definitely want to acknowledge her in this race. But I think that, it's just such a difficult seat to be connected and to address a lot of the issues that marginalized communities face on a local level, and the need to be empowered by some office that's really just largely disconnected from such the need for local spaces. But I mean, I think that's as far as I can go in terms of that.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Jonathan, who are you supporting for mayor and why?
I also don't have like a strong position because I think that this is probably kind of echoing a lot of sentiments of a lot of activists, especially activists within DSA, where it's far enough removed that it's kind of hard to sort out where the most we could get done. But I'm honestly I'm leaning towards Diane Morales. I have never talked to the campaign. I don't really have any like real connections with them. But, you know, I think that it's good when we do take a position. You know, I like it when people have an opinion and a position, because it at least commits you to something politically, and there's sacrifices that go with that. And I like when people are willing to take sacrifice, like, you know, make sacrifices and take commitments. So I'm not sure what exactly that would look like for us as like socialist activists. But I think that probably, as the options go, she's probably the best.
Thank you, Jonathan. That actually concludes our list of questions. So we're going to transition to final statements from each candidate. You'll all have 1 minute. I think we're going to start with Sultan.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for letting me speak to your forum. Thank you, AfroSocialist DSA community. And I've been to DSA since 2018, I think, when AOAC campaign, through the AOAC campaign. And I hope like you'll try to know me, and whoever your first choice, keep me on the second choice. You know, please, you know, help me out or pay for so that I can stop this eviction in March 15. You know, but anyway, I request for your help, support, and guidance, and your input. You know, if I'm doing something wrong, redirect me to the right direction. And with your help and support, you know, we can make a better community and a better place for all of us. You have to understand that this is us we are talking about. It is our community that we are talking about. It's not that because of me. It's not about me. I took landlord 7 times in the court, hearing and trial, because I wanted to justice. I stood up against corrupt judge. Judge wrote down in a court verdict, you know, I complain against a judge in a court verdict, another judge wrote it down. You know, that's why I'm being retaliated. This kind of corruption need to end. And you try to know me. After knowing me, if you think that I'm not suitable, don't vote for me. But at least keep me on the second position. That's all I'm requesting you. Pray for my health, pray for our community, pray for all the COVID victims and everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sultan. Next, let's hear your closing statement from Lorenzo.
Yes. So a couple of days ago, I was asked what is my main priority for people in District 26, and I answered it was the opportunity to empower themselves. And my goal is for people all over District 26, and especially people in the marginalized communities of District 26, to have the confidence to say, we don't need a council member to take care of our community. And you know, my consistent efforts on a daily basis are to simplify that and make that the most accessible when it comes to the most basic needs and the most basic actions that they can take, whether it's rent striking, creating access to healthier food, or abolishing the NYPD. We're ending the cycle of dependence and false direction. And I've been the only candidate consistent and explicit about that goal. And it's probably because I'm the only one with the energy for that organizing, or probably because I prioritize my community over the system, or it's probably because I understand that unless we lead from the bottom up, more people will suffer. And it may be because all of those reasons. But either way, I'm fighting for Black liberation in District 26 every way possible. And I'll be here with that same conviction for the next 5, 10, and 20 years to come. And it's through that fight that I'll win this council seat. And I want to thank everybody here for their time.
Thank you, Lorenzo. And finally, we'll hear closing statements from Jonathan.
Hey, so I mean, I want to state a few things. So first of all, I very firmly appreciate a dedication to empowerment of communities and a dedication to internal democracy. I want to say that this has been a foundational part of our campaign, and actually has been a foundational part of my life for the past few years. And finding ways in which communities can actually advance their sentiments directly onto the desk of a legislator so that it can then be delivered to the floor of city council, of state assembly, of state senate, of Congress. That's been actually a big part of my goal. So like, as a pursuit of that, you know, I've been able to help the Queens branch establish systems that enable that. That type of democratization. And I've also created those systems within our campaign itself so that we can actually have the political sentiment of people, of the communities being recognized. For me, I think that, of course, we got to make sure that we're finding ways to advance the fight against colonialism, because especially as our movement in this time, that is one of the biggest challenges. So I look super forward to being able to help us take on those challenges. And I hope to be able to take those challenges on with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jonathan. And I'm going to go ahead and begin to close this out. First, of course, I want to thank all three of our candidates who are running for city council from District 26. That was Sultan Maruf, Lorenzo Brea, and Jonathan Bailey. We deeply appreciate you taking time here to have this conversation. You know, I want to thank all of those who were able to watch this live stream. Please feel free to share it. Again, my name is Jawanza James Williams. I use he, him pronouns. I'm one of the members of the Afro-Socialists and Socialists of Color Caucus of the Democratic Socialists of America. So we encourage you, if you're not a member of the DSA, to please join, and to also, if you're a person of color, in particular Black folks, join the Afro-Socialist Caucus. Reach out to us. We're very accessible. We want you to be a part of this. And the last thing I really want to say is that we are at a unique moment in New York's history. I mean, in global history, of course, but we are building powerful socialist movements, and which mean anti-capitalist. You know, the word socialism can be used in many ways, but what we're talking about here as the Democratic Socialists of America, as the Afro-Socialist Caucus, is about how do we radically transform the way that our society is set up, the institutions that are in place, which ones need to go, like the police, which ones need to be built up, like, you know, different models of worker ownership, et cetera. And, you know, we understand as the Democratic Socialists of America, many of us in this massive organization that is ever democratizing, we understand electoral politics as simply one pathway for us to advance our causes. It is not the only pathway, and no one has ever suggested that that is the case. So I think that it's important that we elect progressives, socialist, anti-capitalist leaders in our city council, in our state legislature, in our federal government. And also simultaneously, we have to build powerful non-government organizations, institutions that are able to wield the democratic power of the people. And the Democratic Socialists of America is a vehicle to help us concentrate that power. So I encourage folks to join us, to not be distracted by the naysayers, by the moderates, by the conservatives, by the quote unquote liberals who really don't want to see us build this kind of worker, low-income, poor people, working class, multiracial power. And we're doing that work, and we're seeing the benefits of that work today with, you know, having candidates like yourselves run for office, and for us to have a powerful voice in what New York City and New York State looks like going forward. So with that, I say, go forth, do this work. We're going to transform this world, because if we don't, there will be no world at all. And of course, thank you to the lovely Bianca Cunningham, founding member of the Afro-Socialist Caucus, and also organizer of this forum. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, and good night.